Okay, thank you. Item number 2, the adoption of the agenda. Wondering if I can have a motion. Councillor Moore.
I would like to move that the agenda be adopted as amended, and the amendment would be to.
Could I have a motion? Councillor Williams.
Thank you. I move that Council adopt the August 23rd, 2022 regular Council meeting minutes as presented.
Any discussion? Councillor Windsor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Engel. I'm not sure about the motion that is recorded about the bike stand and location of the old bike rack. I thought that the motion was to bring back some information about what could be done to mitigate the bike parking between the time that strategic planning strategic planning workshop looks at the proposal that was presented and now. And I don't see that reflected in the motion that's there.
Did you want to respond to that, Ethan?
Sure. That is how we recorded the motion, but we can certainly, that's the information that we brought back, is that we looked to see if we could have the bike rack. Yeah, that was how we recorded the motion. So is there, we're open to if there's additional information that council would like to have brought back on that, and maybe just some specific parameters put on that.
Councillor Moore.
I'm just looking through my agenda, but I seem to recall that somewhere within the agenda it addressed sending it to the strategic planning session. Mm-hmm. Where is that within the?
That's in the motion. Yeah.
It's not in that motion.
7.6.
Is it? Okay. Oh, okay. So there were 2 motions. All right. Yeah. Sorry.
So the intent of my motion at that time, and I remember apologizing to the gal that was doing the presentation, was that certainly something could be done between now and when we look at that from strategic planning, because that's going to be a month or 2 down the road, and then she's got to do fundraising after that. So there was some discussion about the wraparound type wheel type bike racks. I don't think it captured the intent of what was intended there. So if we need to make a new motion to give some direction there, I'm quite happy to do that.
Yeah, I would recommend making a new motion that we can vote on.
After this motion, or after we vote on this, or the acceptance of it?
Yeah, I guess we would.
Yeah, I guess we would accept this and then have a new motion, but what number would that be? We could do...
Just be part of the minutes.
Yeah, well, the minutes would be 4.2 maybe. Would that be right?
Business arising from the minutes?
Or business arising from the minutes 4.2? Would that be correct?
I don't know if that's in our procedure.
Yeah, I'm looking to...
I mean, it's okay if a motion technically can happen at any time. And so it doesn't even need to be titled anything. It can just simply be after you approve the minutes. Then if Councillor Windsor wants to put forth a motion because of the discussion from that's okay.
Okay, so then if there's no more discussion, we'll call the vote on the first motion is to accept the agenda or the minutes, and then we would look to Councillor Windsor to make a second motion. So,
Did somebody make a motion for the minute?
I made a motion for
yeah.
I'm sorry.
So if there's no more discussion, I would call the vote. All in favor?
I have my hand up.
Oh, sorry. Just delay that vote for a second. We had a question.
It's just really a question. Like reading resolution 415-22, which is coming up in camera. Like, how do we keep track of what that means? Do you know what I mean? Through the chair, maybe to Ethan?
Yeah, we in administration keep track of what that means.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, back to calling the vote. All in favor? All opposed? That's carried. And now Councillor Windsor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Engel. I'll move to direct administration, council direct administration to bring back options available to place a bike rack in front of the Disbury Municipal Library.
Questions, Councillor McCoy?
Just a question again, for clarity, who is paying for this bike rack? Is it the library? Is paying for it, or we are? I heard something about fundraising.
Well, I think the question that he's asking is for an alternative, so they would bring back an alternative, and at that point, if there was a cost, we would look at it. We don't know if there's a cost or if there's something that can be used until.
My question is much more basic than that. It's like, who's paying for the bike rack? Because if we're not paying for it, they should be bringing options to us, and we should say they're all good. Use whichever one you want. Like, is it our place, or are we paying for it out of upcoming budget?
Ethan?
I think the way I'm understanding what Councillor Windsor's wanting administration to bring back is some options with some cost options to put a temporary bike rack there while this larger proposal is being considered. So in the meantime, a more regular basic bike rack to fill a need, if even possible, and with some cost off. That's how I'm sensing Councillor Windsor's intent.
Yeah, and I think that we had a bike rack there and we removed it, so it's gone, and we'll get to that later. But I don't know that we can look at any cost. Maybe there is an alternative that they have. So, but I don't know that we're asking the library to pay for a bike rack. So, Councillor Windsor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Engel. That was one of the things, is that there was a bike rack there, and the town took it out, and so where to go was the question, and there was some discussion about that. And then I think it was even Councillor McCoy that suggested that maybe the garbage can could be used to move to the curbside and make room for a bike rack. And there's a fairly large discussion about it there. And yeah, what I'm after, if it's possible, with council's blessing, is to get a temporary bike rack back there so that we have a place for the kids to actually park their bikes while they're at the library.
Councillor McCoy.
Just one more thought. Do we have an extra bike rack kicking around? Because buying a bike rack as a temporary solution might defeat the whole purpose. Right? Once you buy the bike rack, why not make that bike rack you're going to leave there? Or do you have one in stock somewhere?
No, we don't have any. We did look to see if we could find it, and we couldn't find it. So we don't have any bike racks.
Yeah, and I think that would probably be part of what they bring back if there's nothing available, what the alternative could be, and if that is putting in we don't know until they come back with it and what the cost will be. So, any more discussion? I will call the vote then. All in favor? All opposed? That's carried. We have no, what?
saying, God, straight this.
Okay. I think I misunderstood as well. I know what your intent is now that you were explaining that. It was to have something even temporarily there until this is looked at, so I would apologize for that as well. No public hearings tonight. One bylaw and policies, 6.1. So I'm wondering if I could have the chair of the Policy and Governance Committee make the motion and give us an overview on this item.
Yes, we did have a discussion about this, and there will be more coming out of this at our strategic planning. But at the moment, I'm making the motion that council accept the recommendation from the Policy and Governance Committee to not make any changes to the council remuneration policy COUN 004-22. We felt that there wasn't widespread support for this, and that we will be dealing with remuneration in general and for committees as well at our strategic planning. So we want to leave it till then. Councillor Windsor, did you have anything, or Councillor McCoy? No?
So this is going to be like, I know we have questioning here. No one had a question. I understand and agree with Councillor Baswick that brought this issue up, and if we're committed to looking at it in the strategic planning session, then I'm okay with that, but I don't want it to just disappear.
If I could just respond to that, I think the council committees themselves are generally at least a half hour, and usually more like an hour. I think maybe the ones that are really short are things like MPC, right? And so that is something that we'll be looking into later.
Ethan, and then okay, Councillor Windsor.
Thank you. I will add a little bit, if I may, to Councillor Moore's comments, and that is that in terms of the remuneration, councillors are not compensated for travel in town or prep time in town. That's included in your monthly stipend. And so if the meeting only lasts 15 minutes, then being paid half an hour is certainly adequate, given that travel and preparation is not paid for.
And then I was just going to note, inside the policy is a framework for the whole thing to be reviewed every term, where council can rethink all their rates and the way that they compensate and all those things. There is a built-in review process to ensure that that's done every term as well.
Okay, so if there's no more questions, we have a motion. Oh, Councillor Baswick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I guess the question I have for the committee who made this decision, have they polled neighboring communities to see if we are aligned with them, or are we standing alone with the decision?
This isn't meant to be a wide review. That is more suited for a total review of the policy, which, as our CEO said, is upcoming. And certainly our strategic planning is, rather than in the middle of a budget year, to make a change, that we felt it should be looked at as a whole, rather than just this one piece. So at the moment, we want to leave it, we recommend that it be left as is, with further review at the strategic planning, which isn't that far away.
Councillor Baswick.
In response, just I guess the answer to my question was no. I didn't get that, but that's what I get out of that political response. Okay, so thank you.
Ethan.
Yeah. A few alternatives that sometimes work. It sounds like there is some interest for it to be reviewed as part of the strategic planning process. I'm hearing some of that. We don't have it currently on the docket for that event. So if that's the intent, maybe that should be added to the motion.
I didn't see who was first.
Okay, Councillor McCoy?
I was just going to say that we didn't discuss what other towns are doing. And so maybe we owe that a look, but I'm not sure. I also don't remember us saying that it was going to come back to the strategic planning committee at all.
Councillor Windsor?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Engel. I think that what Councillor Moore was referring to was that we were going to discuss compensation for members of the MPC, and that was going to take place at strategic planning.
Yes.
It didn't have anything to do with this minimum 1 hour thing. It had to do with another aspect of the remuneration policy.
What other aspect? What are you talking about?
Councillor McCoy?
I was just going to suggest that maybe a friendly amendment might be to move the motion forward, but add that we would like to see what neighboring councils are doing, because it's a valid point. I didn't think of it at the time.
Councillor Baswick?
Thank you, David. I appreciate that because historically in this council, we have a tendency to reflect on what other communities are doing. And so it's just normal to bring this in and find out what they're up to, so that we're always talking this 60% percentile or whatever it is to be in league with other communities. So let's do that, please.
So I guess my question would be for administration. If the policy of remuneration is to be reviewed annually, would it not be appropriate at that time to bring it as part of that discussion? I don't know that we need a motion to do that. I think when that discussion occurs, that's something, when we're looking at remuneration, that would be part of minimums and maximums. Well, during even strategic, is it being brought back at strategic planning, or during when would it be, when would we be reviewing it?
So the current updated remuneration policy sets forth a framework that in the year of the election, the council will review every part of the remuneration framework and the rates and everything. And as part of that, we compare with other communities and do that process. So it's not an annual thing. So it's not currently being planned to be brought back at the strategic planning unless specifically council would like it to be brought back, which is fine. Council can.
Sorry, I put my own hand. Maybe I'm misunderstanding something. I thought we were looking at some remuneration. Have we concluded all of that? Like with your committee, that's all been concluded?
That's what this report is intended to address.
Okay.
This report is in response to when the council asked the committee to consider minimum rates. So they did consider the minimum rates. They had a good discussion about it, and they're coming back and recommending not to change the minimum rates. That's their recommendation from their discussion.
Councillor Baswick?
Well, I don't know if this is appropriate, but I'm thinking that, in all fairness, the committee hasn't done total due diligence in this, in my opinion, and that they should have been conferring with other venues in order to make an educated assessment of what they were assigned to do, basically.
Councillor Windsor?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Engel. Formerly, the remuneration policy had a ad hoc committee formed by citizens to review the remuneration policy during an election year. And this is in concert with what was recommended by those members of the community to have this kind of setup. And I can't speak for the committee, but I think that it is important that we, during this term, respect the input from those citizens and the recommendations that they set forth that the council approved.
Councillor Baswick?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. With all due respect, I think that citizen group was basically looking at the honorarium and various travel expenses and that type of thing. They did not pigeonhole any specific item, in my recollection. And that's when the council took their reduction, fair enough. And that's what that committee recommended. They didn't specifically say that this particular commission or that particular commission or this time spent here and there was in question. They, in my understanding and what I heard.
Councillor McCoy and then Councillor Moore.
I guess to move this forward, I would suggest we approve the original motion and then make a separate motion to have administration bring back neighboring costs. Would you be happy with that? And then if it passes, it passes. So if we, sorry, if the motion is passed as it is tonight, that we're not changing that, we probably don't need it if we make this second motion, then you, or I will make the motion if you want, motion that we ask administration to bring back that detail. And if at that time we see that we were wrong or inappropriate, like because we didn't look that way, then we could bring it back up again. I don't think. Like I understand where you're coming.
Councillor Moore?
I believe that I want to get to the same point that Councillor McCoy is. There's no point going around and around here. We could get those numbers. I'm sure that the committee, I know that they put Luana through a lot of hoops and that they looked at a lot of things. And I can't say whether or not they looked specific at that because that was their job. And so we didn't get every minutia of detail. But I don't mind looking at the other rates, either in the committee or having them brought back to council to see whether or not this is done. But we should be able to move on here. One way or another, we should be able to move on, either to accept this and then get those numbers to be able to satisfy those that still have questions. But in any case, we need to move forward. So may we move ahead with the motion and have that information come back to council? I would add that to the motion, if that would satisfy everyone.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. If there's no more discussion, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Amended.
No, wait. And then I think Councillor McCoy was going to make a motion.
So I'll make a motion asking administration to bring back the results of a survey of what other communities in the region are doing as far as minimum time.
So just specifically, what other communities are doing with minimum time compensated to council members?
I guess, for example, is their minimum 1 hour if you go to a meeting, or is it 2 hours, or is it 15 minutes? Whatever that may be. Any more discussion? Councillor Windsor?
Since, thank you, Deputy Mayor Engel. Since this was brought forward as a recommendation from the, what are we, the governance policy and governance, should this not be referred back to them to have that look at those numbers?
That would be.
So I would ask for a friendly amendment to the motion.
I'm great with that. So that it return not to council, but to the Policy and Governance Committee
To explore.
to explore minimum rates. Yep. Thank you.
Okay, then if there's no more discussion, we'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Business 7.1, Rosebud Valley Campground. I think, I'm not sure, maybe we could have community services speak to this before we make a motion, and then we can make a motion and have discussion. Okay?
Thank you. So administration was presented with a proposal that's been attached for council from our contractor at the Rosebud Valley Campground, Melissa Boucher. And this proposal is presenting the opportunity of year-round camping on a trial basis, which would be just for the inner loop, so the kind of inner loop of the campground. I don't know how else to describe that. Which encompasses 7 sites. The trial would be is being proposed from October of this year until April of 2023. So just a little bit of background information. These sites all have electric available to them, so those would be available to campers at those sites. But the water is turned off during the winter just because they're pretty shallow lines. So any campers that chose to continue on under this proposal, they'd be responsible for filling and dumping their own units as required at their own cost. The washrooms and showers would remain available. We tested last year to see, because we were planning on having different events there with the Christmas lights, just to see if they were fine during the winter, and they are. So those would still be available, and that's a metered building, so we'd be able to track consumption just to see kind of how much use it would have during that time. The proposal suggests that snow removal would be at the responsibility of the contractor, who they feel they have the equipment and the capabilities to oversee that. They would also ensure security and monitoring of both the guests and the operations of the campgrounds during the trial period. They've also, in their proposal, included some winter activities that they'd like to incorporate at the campground, which would include trails for snowshoeing or cross-country skiing. The Christmas light display that we enjoyed last year is planned to continue and grow again this year, so that would be an attractive component to that winter camping for those guests, as well as obviously to the community. And as part of the proposal, the contractor is saying that they have interest in 5 of the 7 sites already. I believe that's probably from residents that have been in kind of long-term situations down there. So it's 70% has potential rental right away if council were to be agreeable to this. So the director's team, or senior leadership, we met and reviewed the proposal, and we have no sufficient concerns about going forward with the trial. The potential revenues, based on, we would like a little bit of time to look at rates just to ensure that they would be in line with other campgrounds that are offering this type of service. We'd hope to be able to bring those back to the next council meeting. It would be an amendment to the campground rates and fees bylaw. However, just based on a current monthly rate of $600 per month, which is our standard monthly rate, and if all sites were rented, we could see approximately $4,200. If we want a little higher, up to $4,800 is kind of the swing that we're thinking would be reasonable. So $4,200 to $4,800 per month, for a total of between $25,200 and $28,800 for that 6-month trial period. So there is a potential for revenues that we would expect would cover any additional costs in terms of the water use, and yeah, so that's what's being presented to council this evening.
Okay, I guess we'll go into questions first. Councillor McCoy and then Councillor Windsor.
Is the contract an annual contract, or is it for the months we typically operate the campground? Because wouldn't we be obliged to renew the contract or add a winter camping in addition to the contract?
Well, part of the proposal is, due to it being kind of a trial thing that we're looking at this time, the contractors have offered to do it without any additional increases to their fees in the contract. So that's part of what they're, due to the kind of test nature of it, we want to try it out for a winter and see how it works, and they're willing, because of their interest in that, they've come with that offer that they're willing to do it without any additional compensation.
Councillor Windsor.
Two questions, I guess. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. 2 questions. Is the electricity metered down there? And secondly, just for clarification, are you saying that the custodians are going to do this for nothing? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, they're for nothing added on to their existing compensation agreement, yes. With regards to the question of electricity, can you speak to that?
Yeah, so it is metered, but it's not per site metered. So it would just be all encompassing of, if all 7 sites were rented, that would be what we would see on our bill.
Councillor Baswick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I don't know where that came from. Pardon me? Must have been something in that mushroom soup I had. Okay, first thing is that this campground is very busy. It's very active. It's always full. People rate it highly. All I hear is good stuff coming out of this from the operators of this campground. When you talked about the contract, so it's just going to go on, like if a person's getting $100 a month now through this contract, that would continue at that rate. Is that what you're saying? Okay, that's good. And you're talking about $600 a month. Is a consideration for casual rates, or that just stays standard as to what it's been all summer? And the water lines, if the water lines can't service the sites, unless they're a bigger line, how can they service the showers? So there seems to be a
Those are 2 different lines.
issue there, a difference.
In terms of the water, they're 2 different lines. So the shower is deeper. The ones that are servicing the sites are buried shallow, and they need to be blown out at the end of the season and secured for the winter. And we did test it last year, so we do know that there was no issues in terms of freezing, and it was cold last winter. And the other question was around rates. So we would like a little time to research. I think that it, in kind of administration's opinion, it would seem to be more appropriate to charge a premium for this, because it isn't something that is the same as summer camping. There would be extra costs in terms of the power, it would be running more, and so that's why we would just want the time until next council meeting to be able to bring those rates back. But what we're looking at is our current standard rates, but would want to research that. So
I accept that, that's fair enough, as long as...
From my point of view, there's no major disruption to the operators of the campground now, because the job is being done great, and we don't want to affect that. We've got the right people now. We don't want to have a problem,
Well, this proposal is from the current contractors, so.
Thank you very much.
Councillor McCoy?
Sorry. All right, I'm willing to make the motion as it stands, but I have a thought that because of their generosity, we should earmark any net profits of this winter camping back to the campground for, say, trees around the outside, to add some more details, because that's the least we can do for someone who's volunteering to run this trial program.
You're being paid the same amount, just not additional fees.
Right, but they could be in Mexico instead of here, right? Like, that's just my thought.
Councillor Windsor?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Engel. Nicole, you've identified potential revenues. What are the potential expenses?
Yeah, I think we're going to need a trial period for this just because we've never done it before. I expect that they will be less than what we're projecting as revenues, but unfortunately, this is kind of new territory for us. I don't see it being a loss, but the profit margin, I can't predict at this point in time. You know, kind of probably halfway through, definitely we'll have a much better idea, obviously, of kind of what our costs would be, but unfortunately, I can't answer that.
We anticipate
predict
obviously
next
some
meeting?
added water usage, some
Could we
consumption there,
do some
and a few other
estimates for
things like
next
that,
meeting?
but we don't see, at this point, we don't anticipate a large amount of expenses.
Councillor Windsor?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Right now, we're not tied into the sewer line. We are pumping out at 3 times the cost because they're having to either truck it to Bowden or Olds or Bowden or Innisfail, depending on how the situation in Olds. And so that's a huge expense that we're covering. And there's an item later in the agenda. So, and right now, the campground is costing the taxpayers about $21,000 a year by our budget, by our own budget. If this is going to not be a profitable thing, if this is going to end up costing again, because we have no idea what it's going to be, that's another burden on the taxpayers. And I think that there could be other options, other possibilities, other things that maybe council should consider going to a thing like a lease, like we do at the golf course or something like that, and then the contractor can do pretty much whatever they want during the course of the year, and it all depends on their ingenuity as to how well they do with it. So, like, there's more expenses than just the water and just the electricity. There's the pump out for the septic. There's more involved there. And then we have we'll get on the other one later.
Ethan?
We're bringing this proposal because we think it's an exciting new idea. We like the fact that one thing about the campground is that it does bring a lot of people to the town, and it's a great draw for the town, and it's something that's why we're proposing it as a trial period, to try it out one time, to see how it works, to see what comes of it, and see what we can learn from that, and then to see if it's something that we feel is a value add to the community. That's why we're recommending that council consider approving this trial period and trying it out for one winter season.
Councillor Baswick and then Councillor McCoy?
I just wanted to say I'm ready to make the motion, but
That's what I
was that you're going to do? Okay. Are we okay, Deputy Mayor, to do that? Okay. I recommend that council approve the Rosebud Valley Campground year-round proposal for a trial period of October 2022 to April 2023, and that a report on this trial effort be brought back following the winter camping season.
So if there's no more discussion, Councillor Windsor?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Engel. I can't support this without a clearer picture of what the budget is going to be. I think that that's part of governance, is knowing what it's actually going to be, or giving an educated guess at what it's actually going to be in the long run. I mean, we do have the history of numbers and everything else, so I can't support this, and I'm going to ask for a recorded vote.
So if there's no more discussion, then we will call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, 7.2, request to remove yellow no parking curb. Mr. Dennis Van Dyke, owner of the Didsbury Home Hardware, is requesting that council remove a portion of the no parking yellow curb located at 2405 20th Street. I think this has been brought up in council before, the yellow paint there, so we can have a motion and then some discussion on that. Councillor Moore?
I move that council refer the request to remove the yellow no parking curb at 2405 20th Street to the Performance Review Committee for review and recommendation back to council.
Councillor McCoy, then Councillor Windsor.
So I have a couple of questions. Was Alberta Transportation bylaw and the police asked what the purpose of the yellow line was? Like in your decision that you didn't have any concerns? And because my understanding is it was in there to allow you to see cars coming as you're pulling out of that parking lot. So that would be a safety concern for me.
Yes, that's exactly why the yellow line is there. It was a sight lines thing so that people pulling in and out, so that when you're coming out of the parking lot, you can see the traffic coming both ways. That's why we're recommending that it be sent to the Performance Evaluation Committee so that they can consider, because as we reviewed this request and reviewed this issue, yes, there are sight line issues, but are there still sight, because it's a really wide street when you come out, it's not very tight, and it's not necessarily a Calgary street that's constantly flowing with traffic, and we are a small town, and so maybe if it was at least limited to, say, small cars, would it still be fine? I mean, and that's something that we just felt deserved a little bit of a consideration and a deeper look, and that we thought was well suited for the committee to do, to consider that and decide what they were comfortable recommending, if any change at all, but at least if it was going to be reviewed and considered, is that would be the place to do it.
Councillor Windsor?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Engel. I'm a little confused about this, because I'm not sure why this isn't just something done by administration. That there has to be regulations, traffic regulations, something that bylaw can go for or follow, that says that for this far from an approach you don't have parking, and then you can have parking. I think that you look at any street intersection in this downtown core where maybe the dentist comes out from whatever 17th Street or whatever that is onto 20th, and they can park within, I don't know, 15 to 20 feet of the intersection. I don't see why this is any different. Maybe there's a reason that it's been before council to look at this one, but it seems to me that this is just an administrative bylaw thing, that if bylaw says it's 10 feet from the approachway, and then after that it can just be made parking. I don't see, I think this should be really simple. I don't see the need for a whole bunch of energy spent on it.
Did you have anything to add?
Well, and again, that's why we're recommending it go to the committee, because it's something that we've taken an initial look at it. We are open to having the conversation, but we felt that the committee would be the proper place to explore. those kind of things about whether how much of this is they're willing to, that they think is a valid thing or not at all, or if it's going to be considered. We just felt that there was enough here that was worth rethinking. Sometimes there's things in place in towns and small towns, especially for years and years, and once in a while it's worth re-asking, is that too heavy or too much of a restriction, and can it be modified in any way that's appropriate, and if at all. And that's why we thought that the committee was the place to have that further discussion on that.
So I agree with Councillor Winger. I am in favor of not having it if it doesn't need to be there. I don't know what those rules are, and maybe we do need to hear them, and the committee is the place to do it. But I have no objection. If the yellow lines don't need to be painted there, then they shouldn't be. But we have a motion, I guess.
I don't.
Councillor Baswick?
Thank you. Right now, we don't have any information going to committee as to how to resolve that thing. It's just a painted line. And I agree that pushing it onto committee, number one, the owner of the property has laid it out pretty good as to where the handy bus could be, and that's yellow line, that's fair. But the rest should be wiped out, and it should be a simple decision without having to go ad nauseum over this thing, you know, whether here or in a committee setting. I think this is trivial, absolutely trivial. So I would want to change this motion and get this thing done so the lines are painted over, except for that one, as the drawing shows here. And we're done. Owner's happy, taxpayers are happy, everybody's happy.
I agree, but I don't want to make a motion when I don't know what the bylaw says. Like I don't know what that bylaw is, and I can't just make a motion to remove something if it is going against the bylaw. Councillor McCoy?
Could I suggest that instead of motioning it to move to that group, that we motion for that information about whether it's a safety thing that's recommended by people who know transportation to come back to council, and then if it comes back saying that, then we make a decision, right? I think we need to abide by the law.
Councillor Windsor?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Engel. I think that the motion should be to turn it to bylaw, let them deal with it according to our bylaws. I mean, but this is administrative. Let bylaw set it up according to the bylaws. They know what they are, so let them meet the needs.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm hearing, is that council's in favor. If it can be removed, remove it. But is there something that we're unaware of? I don't know. Like I say, I don't know what the bylaw is, and it's hard for me to, although I want it removed, I can't vote to remove it. If bylaw says you can't do it, then I've voted against a bylaw.
Well, and that's all part of what we thought the committee would do, but I'm sensing here that there's no appetite to have this explored at all. So what I would recommend is that council refer this back to administration to deal with it. But so we thought there was a governance area here to look at, review, and reconsider some things, but I'm sensing there's no interest in that. So we're happy to take it away and take care of it as we see best fit.
So you are prepared to amend your motion?
I will amend my motion. I'll withdraw the former one, and I would recommend that council refer the question of the yellow curbs to administration to be able to remove as much as is allowed under the legal framework that we have.
And you like whatever we
do.
And we,
You had the chance.
we better. Any more discussion?
We have the power.
Wait, you're talking, I'm colorblind. It doesn't, we have a motion on the table, so if there's no more questions, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. 7.3, capital replacement on the electric Zamboni. And I would just ask Community Services to give us an overview on this before we call for a motion. And if you could do that, Nicole, that would be great.
Sure, thank you. So the Zamboni is currently sitting on the multi-year capital for a replacement in 2023, and it was valued at $110,000 on that schedule. It's coming this evening for two reasons. The first is that we have qualified for a $50,000 grant through the Electric Vehicles for Municipalities program that's offered through the Municipal Climate Change Action Center, the MCCAC. So this funding stream was expected to close in April of this year. However, they have had some surplus funds, and so they're just giving it away until it's all gone. In speaking with them and just saying like this wasn't planned until 2023, they don't expect that the funds will be available kind of once we get into the capital budget process. So for that reason, it's here tonight. And also in talking with the supplier, we're looking at an 8 to 9 month lead time for ordering. So we would, if we were able to order this month, we wouldn't have delivery until just before our next year's season. So our current Zamboni is a 2008 model. It's 14 years old. These machines are expected to last about 10, so we're pretty happy that we have been able to get 14 out of it. However, the last couple of years, it's definitely been showing its age. We've been having to put more repair costs into it, approximately $10,000 a year over the last 2 years. And a lot of this repair is focusing on the engine of the machine. She's done. And so we had it inspected in spring this year, and we're limping it through, and we should be able to get through our season. However, we do really need to make a plan for a replacement for it, and that's why it was planned for next year. And so when we reviewed kind of the choices in terms of ice resurfacing, we're stuck with a certain size of model because of the leisure ice surface. So the radius of that is much smaller than our main ice. So when we're looking at it, we have to look at a bit smaller of a machine than other arenas are able to go with. And so the Zamboni M450 electric is the model that would be our preference to be able to proceed with. So the purchase cost of this model is it's almost $167,000, but when you take the $50,000 grant that we have been eligible for it, the total cost comes down to about $117,000. We would expect about $10,000 in additional contracted work. That will just be to have an electrician install the charging station and just being able to kind of prepare the facility for a different kind of unit. The estimated electrical costs on this model is approximately $507 a year, and that's based on our current contracted electric rates that we have. To go with a propane-powered Zamboni, the M446, which is what we currently have, is that size. Ours is a propane model. So new price on that is up just over $121,000, and the annual fuel costs for that are valued at over $3,700 in propane each year, and that's based on what we're paying for propane here in Didsbury plus the hours that machine will use each year. But really the difference that we see is when we talk about maintenance and repair of these units. So with the electric model, we would project about $1,000 a year is what we would plan for that machine for repair and maintenance. However, over the 10-year life of it, we do expect that there would be components that are specific to the ice resurfacing, like the auger or the condenser, that there would have to be either replacements or repairs that happen to that portion. We would be eliminating, obviously, the oil changes and kind of all of the engine work that would be required. The propane unit our R&M would be, just with no problems, would be projected at about $3,000 a year. However, based on the number of hours put on the machine, there's other engine work that needs to be done. And so we've, that's been projected at, it averages out to just over $7,000 a year over the life expectancy, over that 10-year period of the unit. And it would still have kind of some of those specific ice resurfacing repairs that would have to occur, the same as the electric model. So there's a total cost of ownership chart that's been included in your package, and that really, this is kind of where the numbers speak. So over the 10-year life expectancy, the electric model would end up costing the town $182,070, which encompasses the energy cost to operate, the purchase of the machine, as well as that $1,000 repair and maintenance, notwithstanding anything specific to the ice resurfacing repairs, but just operationally. The cost to resurface, so every time that the Zamboni goes out and floods the ice would cost us 15 cents, whereas with the propane model, the 10-year cost is close to $230,000 with the repair and maintenance and kind of all those other one-off things that we have to do throughout the life of it for the engine. The cost per resurfacing is $1.09 each time that it goes out. And the average running cost per year is a comparison of $1,500 versus $10,000. And so the electric model offers a savings of over $47,000 over the life of the equipment. And it comes with a 24-month or 2,000-hour warranty, whichever of those comes first. So we have done our research and spoke with other arenas that are using electric. City of Calgary, most of their fleet has gone that route. And actually one of our former employees is running, he's in charge of a lot of the work at the Olympic Oval. And so we've had some good chats with him about it. And the savings that they're seeing on R&M is just substantial, and even fuel costs. So, we've done our legwork in that regard and really feel confident that this is the route to go. I mean, it does offer reduced emissions within our facility for both our staff and our patrons that are in there. I don't know if you've ever been in when the Zamboni's been out, but it's running. And obviously the R&M decreased costs would be substantial. And because they're a low mileage machine, as well as they're in a consistent temperature environment, because there's talk about electric not doing well in some of our winter weather, these don't experience the same type of issues. So there really isn't any concern around that. So to proceed with the order, a 10% deposit would be required. And then the grant, the $50,000, is paid at the time of delivery, and that's when the remainder of the purchase would be required from the town. We've planned for this in the rec facilities reserve, and we've given you kind of a schedule of what's available there, so it's able to fund this. So that's my pitch, and let me know if you have any questions.
Councillor McCoy?
One quick question. So batteries for electric vehicles, what would the cost be to replace them?
They're substantial, but the batteries for these last the 10-year life of the machine. So we wouldn't expect to have to replace a battery.
But if you did?
They're probably like $20,000, but we wouldn't anticipate that would be something that we'd have to do.
Councillor Windsor?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Nicole, if I may through the chair, is there a resale value to the old Zamboni?
There is. There's actually quite a resale value to the old Zamboni. So a lot of, not likely to another arena, just because it is, it does require some babying and the demand that arenas need. It has a hard time holding up to the number of hours it needs to operate. However, the dealer, our contracted maintenance person on our current machine says that we could expect to get between $15,000 and $25,000 to a private sale. So it's often people who are, running backyard arenas, those types of things. So there is definitely the possibility of seeing some good return on that, and it has been well taken care of. It's just not worth what we have to continue to put in it to keep it moving.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I just want to check my numbers with you, if I may, and you indicated that the propane unit, which is the 446, is 121,000 new, and the 450 is 167. So essentially, the $50,000 grant is covering the difference between those two.
Yeah, it's about a $5,000 difference to the favor of the propane machine. However, it is, when you look at the other ongoing costs that we have annually, that's where this really shines, the electric model.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So, I'm trying to get my head around this. I'm totally in favor of the electric unit, but don't get me wrong. But from a budget point of view and a capital budget, we need a down payment right away in order to order this thing, which is $16,000, $17,000. But we're not going to be able to get delivery up until 2023. So I'm wondering if this isn't a good possibility or a good candidate to have on a split capital budget, so that we have it already on the 23. We just have to reduce it a little bit on the 23 and add a little bit to the 2022 to cover the down payment and maybe get something out of the resale. I'm spitballing there.
So the resale would not occur till after, obviously, we've received delivery, just because with the 8 to 9 months is their best estimate at this point in time. So, but I think Amanda, I'd like to defer to her around the budget question.
Thank you. So I would suggest, if council wants to go ahead with this, that it is an amendment fully to 2022, because we wouldn't want to be put in a position where you approve the deposit and then not the rest of the project next year, but we've already ordered it. So even though we're only paying the cash deposit now, so like only 17? You know, we're paying, it's the cash. We're making the commitment for the full thing. And then the other, about the trade-in value, so that any money that came out of that, we do have a policy on surplus assets, and it would have to come back to council to be allocated, which at that time you could decide to allocate it back to the same reserve to bring that back up a little bit and offset the cost. I feel like there's another piece to your question, but it's escaping me. That was it. Okay.
Sorry, just to clarify, it's not a trade-in. So we would not, it would be a resale. Thanks.
Councillor McCoy?
I'd like to make the motion, if I could.
You can. I just wanted to, I had a couple questions.
Oh, go ahead.
So I'm definitely not against an electric vehicle being used in that situation. It's probably a perfect situation. It's not driving 400 kilometers between charges. My biggest concern is what's going on in the world right now, and that electric car makers have bought up more parts than are produced. And they're talking about some of the cars that are on order now being 5 years out. And when you say it's a 10-month estimate, do they have these parts? Like, is it going to take them 10 months to manufacture it because the parts are already in existence? Or are we going to see what I saw on the news last night? The people that have made deposits on electric vehicles for 2023 are now being told it could be 2024, 2025, 2026, 2027, and in some cases 2028 before they see these vehicles. That's my concern with the electric vehicle market at the moment. Very good technology, and I fully support it. I'm just wondering if we're going to be sitting waiting 5 years for this thing to show up, limping through a machine that we're going to end up having to redo a motor on.
So on Friday I spoke with the company, and they contacted Zamboni directly. I wanted to know, like, is this still a realistic timeline? And according to Zamboni, this is a very realistic timeline. So, if it changes, it might be by a couple of weeks or, maybe 2 months, but we shouldn't expect that same situation in this regard. We've been assured of that as of Friday.
Councillor Windsor?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Nicole, this is, you're counting on the $50,000 as a grant. Is this just an automatic grant you apply for and you just get it? Or is this something like the CFEP where you might not receive the funds even though you think you did a smashing good job?
No, we have $50,000. I've been waiting for council's approval of this project to sign the funding agreement.
Councillor McCoy?
I would like to approve, or council to approve the purchase of a Zamboni M450 electric model valued at $166,997.50 and proceed with entering into a funding agreement with the Municipal Climate Change Action Center under the Electric Vehicle for Municipalities program.
Councillor Baswick?
Just one question, Nicole. I know that batteries, I'm not sure what type this would be. Chances are there are a couple of blocks in series or in parallel, however they want to do it. Typically, one of the cells could go down. So it's not that we're looking for the cost of replacing the entire battery. It's the idea in a maintenance schedule, one of these, I'll call it a cell, could go down. I don't know how you break it out as to how much these things cost, how many batteries are in this thing. There could be 6, there could be 4. But if one fails, that's an expense. Now, we're not going to replace the whole pack. We're just going to replace one. And that could be annually or semi-annually. I don't know how long it would last.
Well, we have to trust the company that deals in these, and they have been selling these for multiple years now to arenas, and they are not seeing the problem with the batteries. So when they say the battery you should expect that it will last the 10 years, we have to trust that. However, things break down. We acknowledge that. It happens to all of our equipment. That's why when we come to the operating budget, we ask for repair and maintenance for our equipment, and so we would always have a safety net there that, hopefully we don't have to spend it. However, if there is a problem, that we have those funds available from council to be able to address those issues.
Supplementary. Okay, so we haven't been told if there is a warranty, or is that the 10-year thing you talked about?
No, it's a 24-month or 2,000-hour warranty, whichever of those comes first. So it just depends on how many hours we would put onto our Zamboni. I would expect the 2,000 probably will come before the 24, but that's, still almost upwards of 2 years to be able to work out any kinks that would be taken care of by the manufacturer.
I think one of the things that electric machines do differently than gas machines, when you start a gasoline or a propane or diesel Zamboni, the clock is running. With electric, it only runs as it's moving. So if you're sitting in it and it's not going anywhere, there's no time coming off that clock. So you might find that the 24 months is actually what you would get. They may not get 20 or 2,000 hours. That's irrelevant. I think your point is right. A battery pack is probably, and I don't know, on something like that, on a car, they can be upwards of $25,000 right now. However, motors for Zambonis are probably 15 to 20,000 if you lose an engine in there as well. So it's kind of a saw off. And I understand some of what you're saying. I think the technology is better, but I don't. All I can do is trust what the company. I do see them in an awful lot of arenas that I visited in the winter. Olds is running them, and I think that they are very, very stable, and because of the climate that they're kept in.
Well, and just if I might add to that, so it used to be at trade shows, like for recreation conferences, we would see the electric models, but they were these fancy Italian things that nobody had really ever heard of. But now, when companies that we're very comfortable with, like Zamboni. We've been running a Zamboni machine for well over a decade. When they're producing them, and we know that we've had success with that model previously in the propane version of it, we trust the supplier when, you know, in that this is going to be a good fit for what we're looking for.
So if there's no more questions, we have a motion. I will call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried.
And that council amend the 2022 capital budget and the multi-year capital plan to reflect the 2022 Zamboni replacement.
So if there's no questions, I will call, did you have one? Councillor Windsor?
Deputy Mayor, I'm wondering in the motion if we need to say where this is funded from.
Amanda.
So, yes, it'd be ideal to have that in the motion. You can just add it to the end of Councillor McCoy's motion to be funded from the Recreation Facilities Reserve and the MCCAC grant. We could put the amounts in as well.
Councillor Windsor?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Engel. So then, Nicole, Amanda, through the chair, if I may, could we have a quick rundown as to what is in that reserve and what's available so that we know what we're depleting it by?
Yeah, it's in the RFD, in the chart, but the Recreation Facilities Reserve, we're projecting a year-end balance of about 436,000. And then the project, the Zamboni project, as we call it, less the grant. So the net cost of the project is about 127,000, and that would leave about 309,000 in the fund. It's lower on the page, sorry. If you have your agendas open, it's this chart.
Thank you, I didn't read the title of that chart.
Oh, no problem.
Okay, so if there's no more discussion, we have a motion. I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Uh, 7.4 is the cemetery pathway. We can have engineering and infrastructure speak to that quickly, and then we can have a motion.
Sure, thank you. Good evening, everyone. So we went to market to get the cemetery pathway work scoped and priced, and under the contract rates that we have under 21st Street at the moment, so competitively attained bids, the pricing has come back to be about $68,000 for the pathway. Predominant reason for this that I've been given is the pressures on the market that the material suppliers have been faced with, as well as more information about the topsoil depths in the area where the pathway is being placed, and it's fairly thick, so we need to bring in a bunch of clay, which we've been stockpiling from the 21st project. So the material's there, but the cost of trucking and placing is what it is, and so the price of the project has increased slightly, so just got to come back to council and get a renewed motion on that.
Councillor Moore?
Chair, I'll make the motion. I move that council approve an amendment to the 2022 capital budget for the Deer Coulee Cemetery Pathway Replacement Project, increasing the current amount by $17,000 to a cost of $68,000. The additional amount will also be funded from the Trails and Pathways Reserve Fund.
Councillor Windsor?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. As a minor increase, I think it's about 30% increase, so I don't think that that's a minor increase in the cost of this thing. I appreciate that maybe there wasn't enough research done on it and that there's additional clay and gravel that's anticipated to be required. But a 30% increase is a pretty significant increase, and I'm wondering if this is a timing thing. Like obviously the research on this was done prior to our budgetary exercises, and it's 9 months old, or maybe even more than that old. And I'm wondering if part of the increase is a result of not getting on it right away and getting that job done at the prices that were quoted originally. I know this has to be done, but I'm concerned that maybe it's costing more than it could have if we'd have done it right away and in a timely manner when the budgets were passed.
Yeah, I can speak to that. The timing of all these things is always just the level of service that council always sets, and so council, by setting the level of service and the amount of resources we have to undertake projects, so that's all I want to say to speak to the comment about the timing on that. Things get done when they get done, as fast as we can with the resources we have to do them, with the very limited resources that we have, with our very lean operation. So I don't know if there's anything else to add to specific about what's going on specifically in the marketplace right now with regards to, I don't know if you want to add anything about just the current market factors that are affecting the costs of these different things in that way.
Sure. So the prices that we're using are from the bid on 21st Street, so they're relatively early season pricing and they're fixed. This is associated with, not to get too in the weeds sometimes, but different estimators on the supply end see things differently, and so there was some adjustments to quantities, and that's why the comment in there is that this number is a conservative one. The last thing I want to do is come back because I'm at $1,500 short. So there's been a more conservative look at it. The contractors do see some risks associated with the volumes that were in the previous bid that the budget was set for early in the spring. And that's why they're suggesting that the price needs to be somewhere in the range of what they're offering right now based on the quantities they anticipate. If those quantities don't come back to being what they anticipate, the project will come in lower.
Councillor Windsor?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Engel. Could we get an idea of the timeline on if this is approved? Are we going to get this done this fall? Are we going to be running through till next spring, or what are we looking at?
Sure, I can speak to that. So the pricing that I've gotten attained for this project is through the 21st Street project, which has a scheduled completion date of September 30th. We are entertaining a change order right now to extend the contract out a little bit because the memorial drainage project is being done under the same contract. So they need about 2.5 weeks to get that work done, as well as the pathway that's been awarded to Ruby Rock, independent of the 21st Street project, but kind of all works in concert because we're all playing in the same areas. And that pathway crew will come and do the memorial pathways and then go to the cemetery. So long answer is yes, it'll get done this year.
So is there any more discussion? I have a motion on the table. We'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. So 7.5 under business is the Rosebud Campground Force Main tie-in. Again, would you prefer an overview before we enter into a motion? Okay.
I feel like the bearer of bad news. So we went to market to do what council approved earlier in the spring, which was to connect the Rosebud septic system, the Rosebud Valley Campground septic system, to the Valarosa Force Main that was put through the campground a few years back. Originally, we went to market with a design from an engineering group, got some prices back. Things were not in line with original estimates, so we went back to the contractors and asked them to come at it from a different direction. We had a site visit. We went and walked the site. We've talked to the gas people. We've talked to the Anthony water treatment people. We now think that we've got ourselves a pretty solid scope of work that encaptures the bulk of the anticipated risks. And so the pricing that's come back is for a pretty small pump, really, compared to the original estimates that we had looked at. This one, I think, is more suitable fit for purpose routes. This is capable of being done this year in sort of like the swing season. Now the campground's open for the winter, we'll have to be working with that too, but that's not a problem. But the prices did come in a little bit higher once we started working with the interlocks that are necessary to connect to the Valarosa Force Main. So just give you a little bit of background on that. So the Valarosa Force Main is a force main that will experience a 1.25 or a 1.5 sections worth of land in the ultimate build out. The operating pressure of that pump and that force main line is well in excess of what we would put in the campground. Campground's a really small system that we're trying to connect to a really big system. So in order to protect the little system, we have to put some pressure interlocks so that the little pump won't try and turn on when the big pumps are running. So all of that included comes out to a bit of a higher price than we had originally estimated. So we're looking at about $40,000 to do that work this year.
Councillor Windsor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So we're looking at $40,000 as compared to what the budget of $14,000. Is that what I'm understanding?
I think the original budget was $20,000. The original approval was for $20,000.
Yeah, that's quite an increase, but what are our costs of, right now, again, if I can be reminded, or what are our costs of pumping that out with a vac truck each or annually, or?
I think we're looking at about $7,000 a year, but that was before. Is it more than that?
The budget is 14, and it's $360 each time it's pumped, and in the summer months it's being pumped about 5 or 6 times, depending on the number of campers that are there. That will taper off. It's lower, obviously, in the spring, lower in the fall, but kind of June, July, August, we see that we're about 5 or 6 times a month.
Councillor Windsor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I'm just doing this quickly in my head and saying $400 a pump out, because I think 360 is probably conservative, but that's okay. 400 times 6, $2,400 a year for pump outs, and we're going to spend a month. I thought you said 4 or 5 times a month.
During peak season, yes. 5 or 6 times a month.
5 or 6 times a month. And is this going to going to Olds then?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I believe it's going to Olds. In June, our pump outs were valued at $4,500 just for June, which would have been May and June, I expect.
I gotta think on that for a minute.
The budget's 14,000, but we've spent 7,000 to date. So I think they're coming in. There's more invoices coming in, haven't been reflected in that amount, but we are tracking below the budget. And to give you an idea, last year was total about 7,000 as well for the cost of the septic pump outs. And it was it's been a similar revenue. So similar amount of users, I would suspect, as last year.
Councillor McCoy?
I'm just curious that with winter coming whenever it decides, that if this is the right time to be putting in deep infrastructure, and maybe it should happen in the spring, as that group has already committed to being willing to, or to make the trailers commit to they have to get their own water anyways, right? So what's the difference between that and then going to the dump while they're on their way to the bulk water station?
So I think there's a couple of conflicting comments in that statement. The sewage is just for the bathrooms. Doesn't provide sewage to the campsites. There's no septic dump site at the campground either. So that it's kind of all independent. Better to work in the campground area in the fall than in the spring. It's the lowest spot in town. And the number of campers that we anticipate towards the end, even with them being open all year, is 7. So I think we can work around it.
Councillor Williams?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. How long will this take? Do you have?
That question I don't know the answer to. I don't have a start date, so it's hard to sort of foster forward, but I would say probably 3 weeks. It's two pits, a directional drill, and then it's mostly plumbing and electrical after that.
So this is not, or is this project providing service to the trailers? This is just for the public washrooms down there?
Yeah, this project contemplates in its scope boundaries to connect the existing septic tank to the force main. I think there's a conceivable next step, which would be to put a sanitary dump down there for trailers to bring their black water tanks over to, things like that, but that's not contemplated with this scope.
Yeah, if there's no more discussion, we can have the motion.
I move that council approve an additional $20,000 for a project total of $40,000 for the supply and installation of pumps, controls, force main, interlocks, and landscape rehabilitation at the Rosebud Valley Campground to be funded from the remaining campground reserve, with the remainder from the general reserve.
Councillor Windsor?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Engel. I'm having a lot of trouble with this, the $40,000, and we're going to have another lift station there essentially that we have had some problems with, obviously, with the Valarosa lift station. They're notorious for having problems. There was a Badger or a vacuum truck down there this morning. There was a vacuum truck at the lagoon this morning. I'm having a lot of trouble with accepting that this is going to be a good solution in the long run. I wonder, I realize that we're paying $360 to have the effluent pumped out to go to Olds. I wonder what the price would be if it was just to our own landfill, because it's our own septic. I think that maybe there's a difference in price there. I don't know, but it's our effluent. We should be able to dump it in our own lagoon. I'm just having a lot of trouble with this and the change and the potential problems with another lift station. And so I think I'm going to ask for a recorded vote on this.
I can speak to the cost of dumping in our own lagoon. So it's a cost center control scenario where the campground does pay to dispose it in our wastewater system, because the wastewater system needs to be paid to treat the effluent. So that same $50 fee that they're paying in Olds to drop the effluent, they would pay to us. But with us, it's the campground gets charged the fee in the background instead. But it's the same price overall to each cost center. Does that make sense?
It would be.
There's trucking involved.
Yeah, well, the only difference is the $100 to go back and forth.
Yeah, I'm having trouble with basically the doubling in cost. That's the one that's, I know in the long run, long term, there should be a substantial cost savings to operating the campground. But I'm just struggling with that one doubling. But we have a motion on the table. So if there's no more discussion.
Actually, could I just ask him?
Oh, yep.
And you've made this recommendation, you obviously feel that it is the right thing to do. I understand that going over and gas lines and water lines is a big deal, and you have to do things with that maybe weren't anticipated. In your opinion, is this the right thing to do?
I think that's a really loaded question. So when I look at a project, I guess whether or not to recommend it or bring it forward, it has to be a rate of return. If we're looking at $7,000, $8,000 a year, and conceivably more if we go to camping in the wintertime, we're looking at 5-6 year return, 6 years at the outside. That's pretty good return on investment when these pumps will last 15 years, and then you put in a new pump and the rest of the infrastructure is still there. So it's operating lift stations does come with a cost and a burden of themselves, but it's a fraction of the cost that we would pay for vac trucks.
And I'll just add to, it's been addressed and alluded to, but a lot of this, I mean, this is most likely, it's not so much doubling because it's most likely what it should have been from the start. It's because the initial estimates that the contractor was doing, he wasn't planning for the right pump technology. And so once he accounted for that, that's what led to he didn't have the right pump equipment that he was planning for. And so to have the proper pump equipment to do the job, so this is just a case of getting the scope of the project correct.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I also have to look at the return on investment. The cost factor plays in on that. I struggle with a project doubling, and I understand what you're saying. But the long-term viability of the campground is also important, and I have to understand if we can reduce that cost by if it's $7,000 or $8,000 or if it's $5,000 a year, then it pays for itself, and that's it leaves more money generated for the town over the long run, but it's swallowing that $20,000 extra that I'm just, it's. So if there's no more questions, we have a motion. I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Thank you.
Seven 7.6, Provincial Police Service. So, The Government of Alberta met with stakeholders across Alberta in the fall of 2021 and will continue to hold meetings throughout 2022. There were 14 virtual sessions scheduled in November and December of 2021, followed by 60 in-person meetings planned for 2022. Stakeholders include municipal and Indigenous governments, law enforcement organizations, public safety partners such as victim service organizations and rural crime watch groups. We're being asked really to select a counselor to attend this. And we can make a motion. We can have legislative services explain this a little further. I think it's pretty spelled out, so I'm comfortable. Councillor McCoy? Yep.
The council approved Mayor Hunter and Councillor Moore to attend the Provincial Police Service engagement on September 28th and 29th, 2022 in Calgary.
Are there questions? Councillor Windsor?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Engel. I'd like to be considered for this. I've followed along with this all the way along. I've gone to seminars. I've worked with through the whole process here with the provincial police thing. The last one was a bit of a joke in that it wasn't an engagement at all. It was more of a regurgitation of information, and I think probably there's only 2 council members that were attended to that. So I would like to be considered for this.
Councillor Baswick?
Well, I wonder if it's appropriate this time. We do not have any confirmation that Mayor Hunter will be returning in time to do any business with the town. And so chances are we have to replace her at this particular point, unless we get confirmation that she's returning to council and, you know, in order to take this mission on.
Ethan?
Yeah, we have confirmation that she's able to attend.
Will she be back here in council?
Yes.
Thank you.
So I guess are we limited to sending just one councillor? Oh, Councillor Moore?
The mayor and I went to the other ones as well, and it is something where I think probably I have a little different perspective. If it's going to be the same both days, it would be good, I think, to have differing perspectives attend the 2 meetings. And that's why I really appreciate the nomination, and I would be delighted to attend.
So what I'd recommend, since there's been multiple people willing to go, is there's a motion on the floor for Councillor Moore to attend in this role. If you're in favor of Councillor Moore going, then vote in favor of that motion. If you're in favor of Councillor Windsor going, then vote against that motion, and then there could be a new motion. Does that make sense?
It does, or could we amend, because I do think it's important that Councillor Moore goes, but I don't want to limit Councillor Windsor from not being able to attend. So is it, I guess my question was, can we only send 2?
Yes, sorry, yes, to clarify, yeah, the province is saying only 2 can go.
Deputy Mayor, I would like a recorded vote on this, please.
How about if the mayor cannot attend it, that Councilor Windsor attend instead? We also,
So the guard got confirmation.
And maybe if I could, Deputy Mayor, with your pleasure, perhaps, however the vote ends up going, who's ever not selected at the end, then council could appoint them as an alternate. So if anything comes up with either of the two delegates, then there's someone already in place to attend.
So we have a motion on the table. Is there any more questions? Then I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And did you want to make another motion? Councillor McCoy?
And that Councillor Windsor be appointed the alternate in case one of those people can't attend. Does that sound all right?
You're okay with that? To be an alternate?
Yeah.
Okay. And if there's no questions, we have a motion. I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Uh, 7.7, RCMP Regimental Ball. Could I have a motion?
I can do that. That council approve council members to attend the Didsbury RCMP Regimental Ball on September 24th, 2022, and that the cost of the tickets be funded from council's professional development.
Councillor McCoy?
If, like, I'm not asking for myself, but if everybody has the room, is there a limit to how many you want to send? Like, are you only sending a couple? Or are we only sending a couple? Thank you.
Councillor Windsor?
I think that probably we need to answer Councillor McCoy's question, and I have a different question, so
We should maybe-
I'm not sure how we go about doing that.
We should maybe do...
I'll rephrase. How's that? Does that work? So what I'll say is that, are we talking about all council members going? Is that what the motion is reading here? That all council members go to this thing? Or are we going to say that it's only two? Or I'm not sure what the motion is saying here.
Well, and it's at council. This is completely a council thing. We put it on here so that council can decide. And we started the conversation with, if you want to just make it that any of you that are interested in going can go on council's behalf. But if you want to limit it, that's fine too. This is completely a council matter, and you guys can put whatever parameters or approvals or lack thereof that you guys are comfortable with.
Maybe what we should do is a little bit of a straw poll to see who might be able to go, and then decide if 6 or 7 are going, if that's too many. We should maybe have a limit of who goes. I can't attend. Councillor McCoy?
Sorry, so by then is the mayor back? Like, is she going to want to go to this? Has she responded?
I don't think, she's not going to be going to this, no.
Okay.
So you're now down to 5. Councillor Windsor?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Engel. While council is deliberating this, I think it's important to recognize what this means in terms of remuneration by the remuneration policy, and whatever council decides, the councils that do attend based on the motion that comes out of here will be compensated the time for attending, or have the option to be compensated for the time attending, and that may have a bearing on the decision here.
Unless council works into their motion some kind of restriction.
Councillor McCoy?
It's just an idea, but that instead of the ticket funding coming from council professional development, maybe it should come from policing, because that's part of the reason we're going there. I don't know. And then you wouldn't be paid for it as a social thing.
There's a motion of council. And so motions of council, official business of council is compensated. You can claim it.
Unless we say you can't, right?
Unless you say you can't.
So I could add that without per diem.
So you could have a motion that says to approve any council member that would like to go, and that only the cost of the ticket would be compensated, claimable.
Perfect.
Or you could say double the compensation if you want.
We could, but.
Councillor McCoy?
Honestly, I think the straw poll is the best thing, like who wants to go? And then if only 3 people want to go, then we decide, do we spend $225 or not?
Well, I wouldn't even word it who wants to go. Some may not be able to go.
Oh,
I think the cause is very well worthwhile, so I don't
for
want
sure.
to be
I know.
interpreted that I'm not trying to
Like
support it, yeah.
I can't go because I've used my PD funding.
I'll give you some of mine.
Councillor Windsor?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. How does this fit in with spouses or significant others?
That's up to you.
Or whoever you have the most fun with.
I think if you're going to take a guest with you, under this, we're not approving the payment for the guest. It would just be the,
It's really not expensive.
So are we doing this from home?
We can, certainly. And
then we can approve them up to $75 to attend
From our own?
from your own professional development.
Are we raising our hand?
Oh, are you able to go, Councillor Moore?
I would like to.
So we have one.
Sorry, and if I could just clarify, this has nothing to do with allowances or anything. So if council approves this, it approves for everyone to go. This has nothing to do with your allowances. This would be over and above allowances. So.
Okay, so we have one that's able to go.
I can go, but if we have a lot of people that want to go, I'm okay with stepping back. How's that?
I could likely attend, but I don't know if my wife will go with me, and I'm not going with others. So I mean, I would have to ask the boss if we're going or not.
I'm available to attend.
I can't, my tuxedo's out for repair, but the last party, so I can't go.
Okay, well, at least we know what our maximum cost potentially could be. That would be 4 councillors.
So 300.
Yeah, so we just have to word it that it only covers the ticket of the councillor, not their guest or harem or whatever. Or per diem, no per diem.
Can't you say and the cost of the ticket?
Ticket only. Non-claimable time.
We're getting over.
Councillor Windsor?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Engel. So according to policy, Lou books all of our activities like this. So is Lou going to be buying tickets?
We are happy to book whoever you end up approving to go. We are happy to take care of booking that. If you guys can figure that part out, we'll take care of it.
Well, I think we should just simply approve that every councillor is entitled to go. And you guys let Lou know by what date, Lou? By tomorrow, if you can attend, and she'll book it for us.
I have made arrangements with three yeses and a maybe.
So are we voting on the current motion?
Oh, just even?
I think
Oh, yes.
we need to get the motion so that we understand it, because right now we've got a motion within a motion within a motion.
Yes.
Councillor McCoy?
Let me try. That council approve council members Williams, Windsor, McCoy, and Moore to attend the regimental ball And the 75, they will be reimbursed $75 or something? No.
No reimbursement.
No, I.
Oh, yeah, you're booking it, right.
One ticket only, one per day.
So we don't even need to,
No.
And then just to clarify, if you have any guests that you'd like to have, then have the guests contact through that information to secure a ticket. Because we'll just take care of your tickets.
yeah, okay.
And then we don't have to get into who's bringing who.
That's good.
Okay, so if we have a motion that we understand,
I got one. To approve council members to attend the Didsbury RCMP Regimental Ball on September 24th, and that the cost of the ticket only be funded from council professional development budget. Perfect. Make sure I'm getting 20. Ticket only.
Yeah.
The cost of the ticket only be funded through.
Only the ticket.
The cost and
Whatever.
and only the ticket.
We all were here, we all know what it takes.
And here we were with that motion I asked about earlier tonight that said nothing, and we were okay.
we now have a motion on the table. I'll call the vote. All in favor? Carried. No opposition.
Okay, go.
Natural gas contract rates. If corporate services could give us a quick overview on this, that would be very helpful to me. I hope to the rest of you.
Sure. So tonight I'm bringing forward a opportunity or an option to lock in our natural gas rates for a period of some time. What we've seen, and I'm sure many of you are aware of what's happening with the natural gas rates in just with things going on in the world, causing the pricing to go up, and we saw that last winter. The town does use about 80% of its natural gas in the winter months, so October to April, and that's when our utility bills increase as well. So to give you an idea, the last 13 months we were on a variable rate, which goes up or down depending on the market, and the average was about $6.74 per gigajoule. So we do work with an independent contractor or energy consultant who goes out and finds us rates to either that we can lock in at, and he also gives us recommendations to when it might be a good time to lock in at fixed pricing. So we've worked with this consultant in the past who recommended when it was time to lock in for electricity, and that was done in the fall of 2019. And he did let me know kind of that first 12-month period there where electricity started going up, or wait a minute. So in April of 2022, actually, he told me by being on the fixed program, it saved the town over $200,000 in the last 12 months against the open index, because previous to that, we were on the variable rate. So that's kind of, we rely on their expertise to give us opinions on this matter. What they're recommending right now, or kind of their predictions for what the market will do, is that it'll stay high over the winter and potentially start coming down after that. When pricing comes down in the summer, it doesn't impact us as much because we're not using as much energy. So his recommendation is to lock in for a period of 1 to 2 years, so 12 to 24 months, and kind of go from there after that point with the expectation, and I guess an educated prediction that pricing will come down, and then we might either go back to the variable rate or a different lower fixed rate for a longer period of time. So hopefully that gives you an overview, and if I can clarify, because I know this stuff can be confusing, please let me know. I can answer any questions.
Councillor Moore?
Yes, I'm looking at doing the same for my commercial building. I normally, a variable rate is the best. You get the advantage of all, and it costs some money to lock in. But in this case, I think that this is a wise thing to do. I would make the motion for 24 months because I do feel that we're in for a lot more volatility in the short term. And I like the idea of 24. I wouldn't want to go too far, and again, like it says, the risk of like 5 years would not be a good thing. Normally you're looking at gas in the $2 to $3 range. You're not looking at this kind of at wholesale. Maybe I'm looking at the stock market prices. But for sure, in the short term, we could have some really high ones. We got extra carbon tax coming on too. So if you can have all the discussion you want, but may I make the motion? I move that council have administration lock in the natural gas rates for town of Didsbury's natural gas sites at the current lowest available plan for a period of 24 months.
Councillor McCoy?
Can I ask who we're locking in with? Because the RFD states that it won't be direct energy.
Well, what will happen is if you approve the motion, I'll go back to this energy consultant. He'll get new rates because these basically change every day. And we'll have to see from there which company it is. So last time I spoke to him, it was a retailer called Campus Energy, I believe, and we're currently with Direct Energy, so I don't anticipate administratively any changes. It'll just take, it would be on them to set up our sites with the new retailer. Kind of like if you switched your home's energy from ACO to Direct Energy, how that's kind of a seamless transition as well.
Councillor Windsor?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Engel. Is there an option to opt out of this if the variable rates go below what we're locked in at?
Just like you did use a lot of money back.
That's not my understanding. I think you have to you locked in for the 2-year period, or the however many months you decide, 24 months. And then after that time, you would reevaluate.
Well,
So actually, and then say if the pricing does drop lower, you could lock in at that new price after your 24-month period, but you would still have to wait till the end of that period to lock that in.
yeah, and that's basically they're saying, we're willing to give you this rate, but you have to commit to that amount of time. So there's no reneging once you go back, because that's the deal that you were given.
I'm certainly comfortable with a 24-month, I think, with what's going on in Europe, and nothing seems to be coming down in price right now. That's a little over $1 a gigajoule less than what we faced over the last 13 months. I wouldn't feel comfortable going longer than that, but we can't see into the future. So if there's no more questions, we'll call the vote. We have a motion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Then we have 7.9, the federal electoral boundaries. I think Councillor Moore would like to speak to that.
Yes, I would. This was precipitated by page A25 of our today's newspaper. I did know they were doing electoral boundaries. We're getting 2 more electoral districts, 3 more electoral districts in Alberta. But what it does mean for us is that instead of taking a chunk out of Red Deer that has a high level of population and plopping it into our riding, we're going to have a riding that is much more rural and much more like us. And I think that's a really good thing. Now, we're too late for in-person representations, but they will take written representations until November 1st. And I would like to propose that I write one with the approval of council and help of administration to represent people are going because they're upset with things. I think it's important to say when they've done something right too, and they get very little of that. This would be my 4th one that I've been to. I went to 2 on my own and 1 on behalf of council. And there's some general messages they need to hear as well. So the proposed constituency is a big improvement. We'll no longer be with a city that has a lot of population. And although Innisfail is upset that they are not in our area, that actually would just be a change of boundary. Hopefully we could keep the contiguous area that we have. It may be that, and certainly council was talking about, I'd rather have this and I think this would fit better. But I think it should be noted for the group that hears this, that our trade corridors run north and south. What I found is that previous boundary commissions didn't understand that our trade runs north and south, not east and west, so they were doing some of these slices right across the province like they did for Innisfail that don't really work very well. I think it would be helpful for us to note that as well. And in addition, I think just to be, reinforce that there is a 25% allowance for very low, I'm just going to say it, because federal law allows the very most inaccessible, huge, and remote areas to have up to 25% less population within their boundary, and also up to 25% more population for city constituencies that can be measured in blocks. I would like to be able to say that although our riding will be mid-size and we don't require any of that, that it is important to support those important variations within our province so that people that don't even have roads maybe can cross it, ice, and maybe never see their MP that are hours away compared to somebody whose constituency can be measured in blocks and they can walk it in a day. There needs to be that kind of allowance for the realities of the Canadian landscape. But I think it's important to say that they've got it right when they put us with other municipalities that are like us. And so with council's approval, I would like to start that representation and have it approved by council at the next council meeting, and with all of their input. Certainly I would be happy to send it around to everybody in the meantime. But I think it's important to put in the good things too and reinforce the things that are right. So I would move that, and I don't know if administration would like to write the letter or if it would be all right if I write it. Yes.
Councillor Windsor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Engel. Our spokesman is the mayor.
Yes, and certainly, I would love to write with her.
Yeah, it should come from the mayor.
I have no problem with that. I think that she would agree with the precepts. And so may I start the process? I would like to be able to get this underway because we only have we have a limited time in council meetings.
Councillor McCoy?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I just have a question. If you read the MGA, it kind of states that you can only have one mayor, so that if the mayor's gone, you are the mayor. And as we don't have a return date, I'm going to suggest that you and she do the letter, unless it takes enough time that the mayor has told us when she's coming back, I guess. I think that's more appropriate and follows the MGA better.
Councillor Windsor?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Engel. I think the decision here is simply, is this letter to be written? And it obviously is going to come from the mayor because the mayor is the spokesman of the town. And so I think it's just a matter of, is this going to be written? Who writes it? It could be administration that writes it, or it could be the mayor that writes it, and that's her decision because she's got to sign it. And so I think the decision here is, are we going to move forward with this?
May I make a motion then that we move forward with sending a representation to the Boundaries Commission to reflect our values and interests?
You certainly can.
Is that it?
What I'd recommend is that the intent of the letter be in the motion. So if Councillor Moore's, so that send a communication. It sounds like expressing support for the new boundaries to the Boundary Commission. And then of course, and that can be that council send that letter, and then of course that will sort out how that all works between the deputy mayor and the mayor and myself. We'll figure out the logistics of constructing that, and we'll capture the sentiment that would be in the motion.
So I have a question. Are these boundaries approved, or are they just proposed? Okay, so yeah, I like what they've proposed for us as a region. Councillor Windsor and then Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Engel. I'm not sure why council is doing this. I'm not sure why we're even considering this. This is federal. This is the citizenry that is going to either benefit or not benefit. I don't see the benefit to the town particularly. It's not going to make us any bigger or any smaller or make us more marketable or anything. I don't see what benefit this has to the town of Disbury. And so, I mean, it does to the residents as citizens, but to the town, I don't know what this has to do with the governance of Disbury.
Thank you. I feel like we're wasting too much time on this. I think we should be moving on, but I do support in sending a letter through administration to them. Unfortunately, we cannot make a representation at the hearing in person because that is passed. But I also do support in the letter supporting Innisfil and potentially voting, because I am not in favor of those two towns being included where they are. I think they should be included with us, and actually looking at the proposed population, we are actually one of the lowest right now. We have 110,000 touring run population, and compared to all the other ridings, proposed ridings, we're in the lowest. This is all coming from their website, so I think we should include in the letter we support towns and spell and possibly the town board and their suggestion of going into like a riding of Canberra, Cochrane Olds.
I understand what you're proposing. I too don't I don't quite grasp the concept of council proposing this, I guess, or sending a recommendation. I don't do. At the end of the day, do we really get any say in what the feds are going to do with this? This is what they've sent out. I know they want more than saying we're happy with what we have. I would rather ask that they maybe consider putting Innisfail in Bowden in our constituency and leave it like that. I think that would include our intent of, but Ethan is kind of our expert in policy and legislation that way, and I would like to hear his suggestion on this, if I could.
Sure. The federal government has their own reasons and interests and motivations for why they make changes to electoral boundaries from time to time, electoral district boundaries. Some comments have been made. It's not really related to town, specifically municipal business itself, as much as the town's political interest in who they're grouped with as a political grouping. So there would be that interest. So it's whether or not the council. My only concern would be, this is the kind of thing that normally individuals speak to, because, as has already been demonstrated, I don't know if council all feels exactly the same about the boundaries. And so that's really hard to articulate on behalf of the organization of the town of Didsbury. If all of you fully were lockstep exactly on the kind of input you wanted to give, then that would be something that would be appropriate to do, because there is a political interest in how you're grouped. But the difficulty I see is just because I don't know how you articulate what I've already heard now has been 3 or 4 different perspectives on those changes, and that's hard to capture.
If I may, I didn't realize that others would not have had the discomfort I did with being grouped with Red Deer. But I'll do it on my own. I have no problem with that. I've done it 3 times before. I'll do it again. So yes, and I have no problem with that. I just thought that maybe council would like to support a good move by the federal government for a change. Okay, I'm willing to withdraw it.
It's an item on the agenda, so I think there has to be a motion that comes to address it.
What I'd recommend, I mean, not technically you don't have to have a motion, but it does make for kind of a cleaner minutes. And so what I'd recommend is simply that a motion could be passed to accept this item as information.
Would you change it to that? Amend it to information?
Well,
Accept your own information.
my own is information. I have the information.
Okay, we have an amended motion on the table. I'll call the vote. All in favor? All opposed? That's carried. Okay, our CAO report. Did you have any highlights you wanted to present, or should we go with some questions?
Sorry.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, the main one we just wanted to call your attention to, it's kind of something that we're happy to finally have resolved, is that long outstanding mortgage that has been something we've been wrestling with for some time, and happily both sides in that ongoing discussion we've been able to resolve everything. And have all the outstanding funds that we've been owed, both the outstanding funds for the mortgage as well as the outstanding taxes. So that's a very happy thing, as well as the other thing, the other happy success and shout out for the town is that the 3 properties that had been on the list for tax sale have now all been settled. Those accounts have been settled and there's no tax sales to take or to undertake.
Any questions or comments? Councillor McCoy?
Okay, there's a little bit of a talk around town about what Craig addressed about the the power on the streetlights, that it may cost the people who donated the banners some money to redo them to a different size. Has that been addressed publicly? Like, has that message been corrected?
We don't, I think what you're asking is, are we responding to some of the buzz on the street? We haven't. We don't normally tend to answer the buzz on the street other than in extreme cases. So no, we haven't. It's not been part of any protocol we've had to respond. I haven't even heard. I'm familiar with the buzz, but I haven't even heard it myself. So.
Councillor McCoy?
And my other thing was from an email that I sent to ask Ethan about the whole garden proposal that Nicole had made, and that basically suggesting that instead of spending town money and building new parks or gardens, my apologies, that we could work with the Ag Society to maybe do some sort of matching grant, and then they would continue to manage that that field. They've got 2 acres. They're currently giving away surplus vegetables to the community with a request for a donation if you have it. I just thought rather than putting them in parks and 2 years from now they end up being cat litter boxes. And that's my thought. Anyways, thank you.
So that's, I mean, that would be outside the scope of what the program that council approved is. That's kind of a whole different realm idea, and this is still going. We barely started it. It was just something that was approved recently. So this specific thing that's not something that this program could work with, because it's just a totally different type of scope on that. So what I'd recommend is that might be the kind of thing that during the council visioning that be brought up, if that's something that the council wants to entertain, is something to look for, explore further, potentially to do something there. So, because it's not really related to what this program is that was approved by council.
Councillor Windsor?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Engel. I'm looking at page 34 of my agenda at the outstanding grants schedule, and maybe it's my funding thing that I'm missing. I'm wondering where the planning and design of the East Reservoir $175,000 was funded from, and it's not appearing here.
So that was actually funded from the reserves, from the, if you go to page 32 of your agenda, 32 and 33, it's funded from the offsite levies. Comment number 9 should address that. comment 9. It's, so 151,000 of 175,000 for the East Reservoir design phase is still outstanding.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor McCoy?
Oh, no, we're not talking about budget right now.
No, just the CAO report.
And if there's a question on financial.
So if we have no more comments, could we have a motion? Councillor Baswick? Did you have a question? Okay.
Because it includes the budget, so we are talking about the budget, because there isn't a separate line that says budget, correct? The CEO report includes the budget?
Yeah, well, what it includes here in the CAO report, and this is where Councillor Windsor was asking about, is because it includes the second quarter financial report.
Mm-hmm. But what I'm saying is this isn't another item on the agenda that I'll have another chance to ask questions about?
No, so if you have a question about the financial report, definitely ask now.
Okay. I don't see the cost of the CAO broken out.
Sorry, I don't see the cost of the CAO broken out in the budget anymore. I remember that being discussed at some point, but can someone remind me what the outcome was? Did we decide that we don't want the CAO budget separated, and is there a motion on council books that I forgot about possibly?
So yeah, that was something that is just provided to council on a quarterly basis, separate from this. If it like a broken out thing, that's all in, just the general numbers here, that's all in there. It's just not broken out.
No, I understand that it's all in there. That's my concern. I think that council previously in this council wanted to see the CAO costing in a separate budget. I guess I'm asking, is that true? Am I misspeaking?
Yes, and there's a framework for providing that to council that's separate from this. That's all part of it. Yeah.
And when was the last time
We were provided with that?
That was all going to be revisited at the, so that's, so yeah, that was provided, and that would have been, I don't have it in front of me, but there was a framework already discussed by council and decided upon as to how that would work.
I was asking, thank you. I was asking more specifically about the, not that, but the actual, when is the last time we saw the report that you say comes out quarterly?
Well, as I told you, I don't have that information in front of me, so. But there is a framework that we talked about at our last check-in about how that would work.
Okay, I'm just checking my papers. That's all my question.
Councillor Windsor?
Okay, I move that council accepts the CAO report for September 13th, 2022 as information.
If there's no more questions, I will call the vote. All in favor? All opposed? That's carried. 8.2, council reports. I guess I can just start this time with Councillor Baswick, and we'll move to his left.
Well, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I have nothing. First one comes tomorrow morning, so there's been nothing in the meantime. Thank you.
you, Deputy Mayor. We had a quick meeting on August 24th for the Disbar Historical Society. That was just to discuss the booth that the museum had set up at the Matapeu Arts Festival that happened on this past weekend, September 9th and 10th. I attended on the 11th. I volunteered for a couple hours at the booth and it went over well, and we had a lot of positive comments towards the museum booth on how well it was put together. So kudos to the team at the Disbar Historical Society for putting together an excellent booth. And for all the volunteers at the Matapeu Arts Festival for putting on a great event. Yeah. That's all I have to report.
Councilor Windsor?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Engel. I'm going to try this, okay? RDR meets Thursday, Parkland meets Thursday, and Waste Commission work meets next Monday. But I'm not going to leave it at that. RDR Mug is having Water Smart come in to do a demonstration. It's a supposition or computer-generated estimation of what's going to happen to the Red Deer River the next little while, lows and high flows, so we get an idea of what licensing impacts we could have with the Acadia project going on in the east side of the province. Parkland Regional Library is working on, well, we're working, the Zone 9 people group is working on getting the membership agreement changed. We're waiting from Cremona to pass that motion as well so that we can take that to the rest of the membership. The new CAO in Olds is trying, unsuccessfully, but trying to get clarification on exactly what needs to be done in order to facilitate that change. Waste Commission, we're working on the budget. I mean, it has to come to this council probably at the next meeting from the commission. It's part of our agreement, the membership agreement, that the commission provides the budget to the membership in September. So that you can expect to see that at the next meeting, next council meeting. And thank you. That's what I have for my committees.
Councilor McCoy?
I attended a board meeting of the Central Alberta Economic Partnership last week, and I've included notes, the annual report, and some other sort of brief updates on what CAPE has been up to. And they were in your handout, I think you received from Lou. You sent that out, right? Yeah, they're in the external reports. And that is basically all I've done so far.
Councilor Moore?
Yes, other than the Council Policy and Governance Committee, Mountain View Seniors Housing has been very busy with our new CAO. They are doing an efficiency review, they're doing organizational review, they are trying to see of all of the ways that we could economize. I had them check the lease, and we needed to give notice by October 1st because we don't need as much space as we have anymore. And so that was done, and the amounts that we were able to get by early renewal of our mortgages are making a difference in our financials. We had our meeting on September 1st, and we are having the Mountain View Seniors Foundation Annual Golf Classic that some of us are going to on the 15th, and then we have our retreat on the 16th. And there will be some exciting changes I think you'll see in the future. So, that's the big one.
I think you can.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Engel. There's a concern, I understand, from the county with regard to the Mountain View Senior Housing financial reporting. Could you make a comment on that?
You did have their letter and our response in earlier agendas. At the MAP meeting, the questions were, why does the principal amount keep going up? The answer was the interest goes down, the payment remains the same. So I don't think that one was too serious a question. The other one is, why is amortization an expense? And so we have now taken it out, like Carstairs does, out of the expense list and listing it separately at the bottom of the financials in order to show that it is a non-cash item. Those were the two questions. I don't think that there's anything to be concerned about with those two questions. The MAP, we will have a meeting with MAP. We have a brand new CAO, and she was a little intimidated by the amount of questions that there were in the first letter, which I think were answered, and was unsure what happened at MAP because of course she wasn't there. So Mountain View Seniors Housing will be coming to a MAP meeting, and all councils will be invited to attend, I understand, as we did with the Waste Commission. However, there is nothing to be concerned about as far as the answers, since it was mainly misunderstanding to begin with.
So, the library takes pretty much the same break as council, and we'll be firing back up our library meetings. That will be the third Tuesday, so I will be reporting on that at our next meeting, because I haven't been able to attend one. There hasn't been any. And we have a CAPE meeting, I think, scheduled for next Monday, if my date's correct. Not CAPE. DTAC. I'm on the wrong committee all of a sudden. And we've been several, I would say a month or more, or 2 months in between meetings there over the summer. So that report will come back as well at our next council meeting. So unfortunately, I've had no meetings to report on. And we need a motion. Councillor Williams.
Thank you. I move that council move to accept the council reports for September 13th, 2022 as information.
So if there's no more questions, we have a motion on the table. All in favor? All opposed? That's carried. Correspondence and information. Could we have a motion? Councillor McCoy.
I'll move that council accept the correspondence items presented as information.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
Regarding the recycling council building summit, just wondering if
That is something that the Waste Commission sends members to, and if you will be attending, since the big disappointment is that we recycle, but it doesn't get recycled. And so I'm hoping that there is some kind of news that they've got for us at this recycling summit. Otherwise, why have it?
That's on our agenda for Monday.
Okay, now I forget. We have a motion on the table. So I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Council meeting highlights. I would like to continue with our tradition of having those placed there. Question period. Do we have any questions?
No questions from the media.
Thank you. I now need a motion then to go closed. Councillor Vaswick.
I'll move that we go to closed meeting at 8:36:42 p.m.
I'll call the vote. All in favor? That's carried.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Tuesday, September 13th, and it is a study session of the City Council. We are going 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. We do have a hard stop at 6 p.m. We have a couple of council members with additional responsibilities after this meeting. So as you can imagine, we are on task to get a couple of big topics done in just a couple of hours. With that, this meeting is being conducted consistent with State of California Executive Order N-29-20, dated March 17, 2020, regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. The public may view the meeting on television and/or online and may participate in person in the City Council chambers. City meetings may be observed live on the Salinas Channel, on YouTube, or on Comcast Channel 25. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilmember Barrera, would you lead us? Thank you. And we have a new face. Alexis, you want to give us the roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Barrera?
Here.